I landed home after a 3 month sojourn in the US with hope springing in the human breast that perhaps the endemic name calling and blame game in Indian polity had subsided to more constructive engagement between different political entities. But the actual ground zero situation has become much worse. There is a level of ugliness, falsehood, and a compulsion for complete distortion of truth currently being exhibited among the usual suspects in polity, the media, and academia, which is unparalleled in Indian democratic history. Everything from the abuse of Gandhi by a madcap so called seer to calls for genocide of a community to the denial of FCRA renewal of Mother Teresa's missionaries of charity to the Lakhimpur incident and to the imposition of an undeclared emergency in the words of Bhanu Pratap Mehta. All this is being blamed on one man, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It really makes you wonder, is one man so demonic that all the hate, the vitriol, abuse, and the caricaturing in the world should be directed against him? Let us try and locate the truth buried deep in a pit full of slag of outright black lies, obfuscations, and a prevarication of the truth. Hi and welcome everyone to the CAA show. My name is Juggi Bhasin. CAA is, of course, conversations and analysis of all the hot button issues facing the country in an objective, impartial manner. So, let us, for the sake of argument, accept the supposition that one man is indeed responsible for shredding the secular fabric of the country, for making our democratic traditions and institutions wobbly, for ushering in an undeclared emergency, throttling free speech, and foisting a Hindu Rashtra on one and all, including helpless minorities. Now, if we accept all this, it obviously means that the country has transformed into a seething cauldron. And if we throw in phrases like genocide of minorities and an impending civil war, then surely it becomes an explosive mix. Now, you would be wondering, where do terms like genocide and civil war enter the mix? Well, you'd need not go any further but watch the latest program on The Wire, where Karan Thapar eggs on Nasiruddin Shah to utter words like genocide and civil war. Keep also in mind that all this is happening when not a word against minorities has been uttered by the Prime Minister, or there has been no official pronouncement or policy that actively discriminates against the minorities. But then, of course, the other side will argue that all this is done nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Okay, so stretching the argument further, let us accept that this is indeed the modus operandi of the Modi government. And by way of argument, it also means that every so called right wing loony or unknown seer or preacher in the country, and every person who lynched another human being ever, and every officer who questions an NGO taking foreign funds, or every Hindu Mahasabha member, or any other saffron outfit stormtrooper which beats up boys and girls for love jihad is inspired or takes a cue, or better still, directions from the Prime Minister to spread anarchy, chaos, violence, and communal disharmony. This, ladies and gentlemen, is not me saying it, but this is the argument of the left liberal secular lobby in the country, which holds Mr. Modi personally responsible for all acts of commission or omission committed by the loony right and Hindutva elements against poor, helpless, terrified minorities in the country. So, if we accept all this, then should we not, in the fairness of things, also accept that the responsibility for every act of violence committed against RSS workers in Kerala and poor BJP workers in West Bengal lies at the doorstep of the chief ministers of both states? That every abuse and profanity uttered by opposition loudmouths against Mr. Modi be it on TV forums or in Parliament, or a call to civil war and loose banning of terms like genocide is ultimately the responsibility of Mr. Rahul Gandhi? Because if every person wearing saffron and then indulging in outrageous behavior is a responsibility of Mr. Modi, then every profanity uttered by the left liberal combined surely is the responsibility of Mr. Rahul Gandhi. But to suggest an argument like this would be considered blasphemy by the left liberals in the country. In their understanding and analysis of the Indian political process, there is only one villain, only one demon they wish to exorcise again and again. And we know who that is. Fact of the matter is that the programs on the wire are being aired where a call to civil war is being invoked. And Mr. Karan Thapar is goading and egging on Nasiruddin Shah to say all this. And yet, Mr. Thapar is not imprisoned or his program taken off air by Mr. Modi and this big, bad, demonic government. And again, for the sake of argument, let Mr. Thapar pick up the courage to do similar programs against Stalin in Chennai or Ms. Mamta Banerjee in Kolkata or the Kerala and Maharashtra chief ministers using expressions like genocide and civil war directed at them. Then I will wager bets with anyone whether people like him would still be smiling smugly in the comfort of their Vasant Vihar residences or end up behind bars in state prison. The real story then is this. For too long, entities like Karan Thapar and hundreds of his ilk, banding under the sobriquet of left liberal, have been peddling specious arguments, playing hooky with journalistic responsibility and ethics, and indulging in blatant lies and falsehoods, and even a call to civil war, because he and other such individuals are not really journalists or academics or impartial watchdogs as they claim to be, but rather activists and agents of political dispensations without a single objective bone in their body. We live in times where the main challenger to Mr. Modi spends half his time in his travels abroad, and political entities like Mr. Kejriwal thrive after having converted Delhi into a polluted hellhole infested with dengue and mosquitoes. But nobody questions them. The so-called intelligentsia rather wakes up every morning scanning the pages for loony items in the paper and then linking up the chain of events to Mr. Modi for the evening news broadcast. Job done, Chinese whispers in full play, like the beat of African drums slowly building up to a crescendo. The narrative against Mr. Modi also builds up, acquiring a life of its own in the national and international media, which dives yet again to pillory and grill Mr. Modi for all matters of commission and omission. Again and again and yet again, continuing the merry blame game. So, if you enjoyed this episode of the CAA show, do subscribe to us, and subscriptions are totally free. We have a very small subscription base at the moment. It is growing. We believe in the principle of small is beautiful. So do join the club, as we say. And therefore, till next time, it's cheers and good night from me.